Good evening. Thank you all for coming. Most of us are on time. That's nice. We have a very interesting program tonight for you that is going to highlight a true epidemic in our country that is a fairly synergistic phenomenon, unfortunately, that you will hear, that of obesity and diabetes. And we've covered the gamut, or the whole spectrum, if you will, from the research aspects of the two conditions to the nutritional aspects and control of hormones and the brain on obesity, and also, finally, to some would consider the ultimate solution, which is surgical procedures, which are growing in popularity. I think you'll enjoy all of our speakers and that entire spectrum on what is truly an enormous problem, no pun intended, in our current health and healthcare in our society. I can say as a clinician that a decade ago we joked a bit about having overhead hoists to help transfer patients in and out of our ICU beds. But in fact, today that's a reality, and it's considered standard equipment. Overhead hoists, mobile hoists to carry and lift patients in and out of bed. You know, in 1980, we built a burn center downtown at Harborview to meet the needs of our region and had 18 ICU beds. And now, if we've got 6 burn patients in that burn ICU, they consider themselves quite busy. But those other 12 beds are now filled with people who are afflicted with a variety of different conditions that relate often to obesity, those of the necrotizing infections that I showed you a few weeks ago, as well as other healthcare conditions. So it's an enormous impact and one that will be growing. Our first speaker tonight will cover the research aspects of this epidemic. Adam Janowski is a PhD and holds a master's degree, and he's a professor of epidemiology here at the University of Washington School of Medicine, and also he's the director for the Center for Public Health Nutrition and the UW Center for Obesity Research. He holds a bachelor's degree and master's degree from Oxford University in England, and also a PhD in psychology from the Rockefeller Institute. He's truly a world-renowned leader in innovative research on the epidemic and the prevention and treatment of obesity. And his current research involves a relationship between poverty and obesity, and also between that and vulnerable, particularly underserved populations. He also talks a lot about access to healthy foods, and he's the author of numerous publications on research in this thing, as well as numerous awards, and has been awarded by his alma mater, Oxford, as the Astor Visiting Lecturer that will happen this coming spring. So he's also a member of many panels of regulatory committees in Europe primarily, on foodstuff regulation. So it's a real privilege and a pleasure that I introduce to you tonight Professor Janowski. Adam?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation today is entitled Obese in Seattle. I wanted something more upbeat, more optimistic, more attuned towards prevention, but weightless in Seattle didn't quite do it. So I stayed with my original title, Obese in Seattle. And I want to phrase the topic, the problem of obesity, in terms of public health concerns. I'm primarily a public health worker. I deal with research, I deal with theory, but also I deal with practice and the applications of research to policy. Some of you may be familiar with the recent initiative by King County Executive Ron Sims, the countywide initiative on preventing disparities and promoting social justice. Ron Sims said it was unacceptable that one's address was a predictor of obesity and diabetes. He mentioned skin color, race, and address. And of course, the data on address and zip codes probably came from studies conducted right here at the University of Washington. So I want to talk about local obesity data. As with research, you need to do sort of general broad research, but policymakers really respond to local data. So you don't really want to be talking to local policymakers about national obesity epidemic. They want to know what's happening in the state of Washington. They want to know what's happening in King County or the other counties, and they want really to know what's happening in local neighborhoods. So let me pose the first question. The first problem that we have is this. Obesity rates in the United States and in other societies in the industrialized world pretty much increased twice over the past 20 years or so. But human genetics and physiology did not change. So exactly what happened? Something is happening to change the interactions between the genetic predisposition and the current food environment. Exactly what is it? And there are many opinions, many theories, some of them correct, other ones perhaps less correct, but all of them interesting. So let me take you through some of those arguments, and I will begin, as many people do, by showing you those notorious maps of the United States that you must have seen many times, but I will show them to you once again. These come from what's called the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, which is actually a series of telephone surveys administered in every state across the United States by local state health departments in collaboration with Centers for Disease Control. So these have been conducted for many years now, and they really encompass about 2,000 families or households per state. So this is the first year that those data began. You see a number of white areas for which data are missing. Those states were not participating at the time in the BRFAS, it's called BRFAS survey. But notice that we have white, no data, pale blue and darker blue, denoting states where the prevalence of obesity was either below 10% or just above 10%, between 10 and 14%. And obesity is defined as body mass index 30 or above, which corresponds to approximately 30 pounds overweight for a woman 5'4". So about 160 to 170 pounds will be body mass index 30 for a woman, and that is the current definition of obesity. So as time went on, as you notice here, the proportion of blue states is becoming greater, and the prevalence of obesity in the United States is increasing. And notice now that now more states are participating in the BRFAS survey, so the white areas are sharply disappearing, but then the map is changing color, and we move into higher rates of obesity, and this is where the epidemic of obesity is really beginning. Now we're moving towards 15 to 19% prevalence per state, almost 1 in 5 people obese. Notice the dark blue is now being replaced by red. We're moving into 20% obesity and above, and moving on, now 1999, the map is becoming red. We're moving on, 2000, 2001, a deeper, darker red over here, 2003, 2004, 2005, another shade of red, and 2006. And notice now that many states have got 1 in 3 people obese, and a majority of the states have got 1 in 4 people who are obese. This is not just overweight, this really is obesity with significant clinical consequences. People usually have an interesting reaction to those data. There was one time I was giving a talk, I was showing those data, and the audience started applauding. This was in Paris. But other people also have this, what I call an over-emotional reaction to these data. The person who cites them all the time and shows them all the time is Bill Dietz, a colleague of ours at the Centers for Disease Control, who uses those data to show that obesity is everybody's problem and it is coming soon to a neighborhood near you. So this is a typical reaction to Bill Dietz's talk, and his is far more dramatic than mine. This is from a University of Michigan School of Public Health newsletter, where they say, more than a few audience members gasped as a dark blue tide washed over the country, and in 1997, the first blotches of red exploded on the screen. Notice the deliberately explosive or provocative language that is really infusing fairly dull epidemiological data with a sense of excitement and drama. So you have here Colorado remained the only state with less than 10% adult obesity, a light blue holdout, and a sea of darker, more ominous colors. So we have this tide of obesity washing over all of us, and what to do. But as is always the case with statistical data, they sometimes conceal much more than they reveal. So you could argue on the basis of those data, and it has been argued, that this is a problem of everybody, that nobody is immune, that obesity really is going to be affecting everybody in the near future, and by everybody, people generally mean the middle class. Now, going from national level data to state level data, there are some very interesting observations to be made. The State Department of Public Health, or Department of Health actually, conducts births for Washington State and analyzes the data to track the position of Washington State relative to the national trends. So these are now data provided to me courtesy of the state epidemiologists from Olympia. And what you see here is the prevalence of overweight defined as body mass index 25 and prevalence of obesity defined as body mass index 30 and above. And notice here that in terms of temporal trends, Washington State data are slightly below the national trend, but by not very much. The temporal trend is right there, and yes, obesity rates are increasing. They are right now at approximately 23% in Washington State. And notice, of course, on the slide over here on the bottom right, that the Healthy People 2010 goal is for obesity rates not to exceed 15%. So the broken blue line on the bottom right corner of the slide is the 15% line, which has been crossed pretty much by every state in the United States, including Washington State. Now, when you look at other demographic factors and obesity, on the left, you see data by gender and age. So this is now obesity, and notice that the peak period in life for obesity is late 40s, mid 50s, early 60s, and then obesity rates go down, perhaps because obese people have by this time died off, and few of them reach the ripe old age of 85. And if they do, there's really no point trying to get them to lose weight. You're just lucky they're still around. So a sideline here, if you have an obese person 85 and over, don't put them on a diet, let them be. The slides on the right are interesting to me because here we're looking at obesity rates by socioeconomic status. And the two types of indices of socioeconomic status that we have are income on the left panel over here, and then education on the right panel. So notice that obesity rates in Washington State decrease as a function of income, and they go down from about 27% over here for low income, actually $1,000 per year is federal poverty level for a family of 4, and they're about 18-19% for 50K and above. And here, obesity rates are lower for people with college education than without, which I always point out to my students is one reason to get a college education in the first place. Then you have data, age-adjusted percentile for ethnic and racial minorities within Washington state. And again, what you see here is that obesity rates are going to be higher for African Americans and Latinos than they are for whites. And then Asians are an exception because obesity rates are really much lower. On the other hand, Native Americans and Alaska Natives have got very high rates of obesity. So here you have a picture of obesity rates by age and gender and education and income and race ethnicity in Washington state. And there are differences here. But as you see, those differences aren't huge. But aren't we forgetting something here? So you could interpret those data, as I said before, obesity being a serious medical condition, which it is, which threatens every single one of Washington state residents. But there is one component which I became interested in. And this is the observed link between incomes, poverty, and obesity, which can be seen by reanalyzing the same behavioral risk factor survey study data, but this time we're not doing it by age or gender, we're doing it now by state, and we're linking it now to state-level incomes, and we're linking it to percent of state residents below poverty. So what you see here is that, yes, Colorado seems to be the outlier, but Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland are much richer and therefore thinner than Mississippi, Louisiana, West Virginia, Alabama, which are actually poor, and I would argue, and therefore obese. And you see the same exact thing here, even stronger, with poverty rates. Poverty rates are actually even a better predictor of obesity rates because the states with higher poverty, Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, and so on, will have higher obesity rates than Colorado and Massachusetts and other states. And actually, this is an interesting finding, uncomplicated by race and ethnicity, because you see largely the same type of relation with Canadian provinces. Canadian provinces, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, are white, poor, and obese. British Columbia, Alberta, Toronto are richer and thinner. So at state level or province level, at any rate, there is a link between obesity rates and what I call socioeconomic status. So here we took advantage of one little-known fact about Bertha's data. In Washington state, those data are coded by zip code. So this is a telephone survey, anonymous telephone survey, but the respondents are asked to give their zip code. And that is part of the data. So you can actually analyze Bertha's data by zip. And we did that. You have to have aggregate data from multiple years because 2,000 people per state is not really enough. Luckily, in the state of Washington, 1/3 of the population lives in the Puget Sound area. And if you aggregate those data, you get about 8,000 respondents, and then you can aggregate them by zip code. So this is now obesity rates by zip code in King County. Nobody other than us had those data. They were just published last fall in a journal, Social Science and Medicine. And notice that, indeed, obesity rates over here, Madison Park, Denny Blaine, are low. Pretty much low in Bellevue, very low in Mercer Island, but you have what I call the obesity corridor extending down from South Central towards South County. And in fact, the disparities in obesity rates are very substantial because here, rather than go by, say, a difference of 5%, we go from 5% in the wealthy neighborhoods to 30% in the most deprived and least affluent zip codes. So now, rather than looking at discrepancies of 1 or 2%, we're looking at six-fold discrepancies, in other words, 600%. Just to show you that Berfus does not get complete information about the population, take a look over here at Medina. And there's a slightly different color which you don't see, but this denotes lack of data. In the past several years, not one household in Medina picked up the phone to answer the CDC survey. So we think we know about the habits of the rich, but in reality we do not. They slam down the phone. So there are limits to this kind of survey as conducted by Centers for Disease Control. Then we thought, well, what can we relate the obesity by zip code to? We certainly looked at education, income, poverty, and so on. Here are now incomes in King County, also aggregated by zip code. You can actually get those data from the publicly available geospatial data archive from the United States Census. You can get those data if you so wish. Here you have incomes, unfortunately, for the University District, much higher over here, really high over here, and yet higher over here. Audiences from out of town don't really know what those areas are, but of course you do. And then we went into median home values. And we're stunned to discover that, in fact, median home values are a very good social index of the relative wealth, poverty, or deprivation of a neighborhood. So that obesity rates were actually, amazingly, linked to local real estate. And I'm not insisting on a causality here. We're merely using real estate values as a proxy measure for accumulated wealth and effectively social class, issues that were way too polite to ask in telephone surveys, meaning that the Berfus interviewers never say, I'm calling on behalf of Centers for Disease Control, and would you please tell me how much money you have in the bank, including stocks and shares and options and everything else. We do not have those data. On the other hand, knowing where people live and knowing the relative value of the neighborhood gives us a proxy measure of who they are and a number of resources. So in fact, what we found, and this was very interesting, was that obesity rates were directly linked to local real estate values. There was a six-fold difference. And notice that the real estate scale really kind of stretches things out, almost a perfect relationship, and a six-fold disparity in obesity rates from 5% over here to close to 30% over here. So this becomes an interesting issue because you can hardly argue that people with genetic damage up and moved away from Mercer Island to White Center. That becomes an untenable proposition. So this becomes a very difficult argument because then you say, how do genetic predisposition and social factors interact when obesity rates can vary six-fold within a single relatively affluent city? What is going on? Did people who are specifically predisposed move into this one geographic location, or what happened? And then we realized that, of course, the Berfus survey is a telephone survey, and as a result, people may misreport their weight, underreport their weight. There are a number of potential biases. So here we went to data from public health surveillance and looked at diabetes deaths from death certificates by zip code. And the map is pretty much the same map. You have here a diabetes death corridor down below in South County. So, for example, when we talk about obese patients in this hospital being hoisted out of their beds, these are clearly not the patients who live in Mercer Island. I can tell you pretty much which zip code and which location and which area they come from. It is really as precise as that. So here now we're looking, and these are very recent data, no one has seen those, and these are courtesy of Public Health Seattle King County, Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, Snohomish Health District. We're looking now at differences in diabetes mortality by zip code, and of course we're looking at the same thing here, association between diabetes-related deaths and neighborhood wealth as indexed by property values. So when Ron Sims said it is unacceptable that one's address predicts diabetes rates or diabetes mortality, he was exactly right. We're dealing with major social disparities really within Seattle and King County. Here is now a very preliminary map of diabetes mortality by zip code. We're now moving to a finer geographic scale. We will have those data by census tract. And each census tract only has 4,000 people. We can get very, very detailed geographic data by census tract, and we're just doing that now. So there are a number of potential factors which may impact this. So I'll just deal with some potential explanations without really insisting on any of them. One, of course, is physical access to healthy foods. What we have been doing, using again data provided to us by Department of Health, is mapping the location of every food source throughout Seattle and King County. So here now is the density of grocery stores in Seattle, King County. And actually, Seattle is very fortunate because there are no what's called food deserts. If you live pretty much everywhere, you do have physical access, let's call it, to healthy foods. They may be healthy. The question I want to defer for a while is, are they healthy and affordable, or are they just healthy? So here you have density of grocery stores, and grocery stores and supermarkets have been associated with sound nutrition. Here you have now the density of convenience stores. These are now data from our collaborators in the Department of Architecture and Urban Planning. In obesity research, you come across a number of collaborators from strange places. So architecture and urban planning is one. And again, convenience stores are located pretty much everywhere throughout the King County. And here are fast food outlets. And notice fast food outlets, and I'm not making any judgments here, they are located around population centers and major arterial, traffic density locations, obviously, but they seem to be mostly in South County. This becomes very critical when you look at Starbucks locations versus fast food locations. And this raises an interesting point, because here you have fast foods blamed for the increased prevalence of obesity, and indeed obesity is located in South County, but the fast foods places will be selling fast food for 99 cents to relatively less affluent people, whereas Starbucks is going to be selling 700-calorie mochaccino with white chocolate shavings for $5 to the more affluent who are thin. So was it poverty and wealth, or was it the difference between Starbucks and, say, Arby's or McDonald's? You tell me. It's very difficult to disentangle those issues once you put in location and the type of food and the type of access into the mix. So my final point is, there is physical access, but there is also what I call financial and economic access. And the critical provocative question here is, do healthier diets in fact cost more? What about being able to afford healthier foods? Now, when I started doing that work, the only national food price data available to me for research were actually in France and in Paris. Right now, the United States Department of Agriculture has developed a national food price database for the US, which actually is not released yet. I'm hoping it will be soon. But what we did here was to look at energy density over here, calories, actually this is calories per 100 grams, oil, 900 calories per 100 grams, and water over here, soft drinks. And here we have energy cost in euros per 1,000 calories. At the time, euro was worth about $1, not anymore. And this was not so long ago either. So we're looking at energy density versus energy cost, and notice that you can get 1,000 calories from sugar for about 10 cents. So if you want to be eating sugar and butter and fat and grains and bread and desserts, you can get it 1,000 calories for 10 cents. So that in principle, using retail prices in France, you can get 2,000 calories worth for the day for about 25 euro cents. But those are going to be empty calories devoid of nutrients. Notice that this is a logarithmic scale, and as you increase this and have meat and cheese and fish and shellfish and foie gras and vegetables and fruit and so on, you are really jumping over here, not 5%, not 10%, you're really jumping to the right about 10,000%. So healthy foods are immeasurably more expensive than the cheap sources of sugar and fat. And just to show you that the Paris prices are similar to Seattle prices, this is the same slide, but now Paris prices, Seattle prices, same thing. So it's the same structure. Energy-dense foods, sugars and fats and refined grains and so on, inexpensive, empty calories are going to be, I suspect, preferentially consumed by lower income groups. The foods that we recommend to the general public, the fresh fish, the vegetables, the fruit, the cheese, the meat, are really out of reach for many lower middle class and increasingly middle class consumers. So if healthier foods cost more, and they do, so do healthier diets. And here we did another study looking at energy density of the diet, the number of calories you can pack into a gram of the diet. And essentially what we're finding is that diets composed of energy-dense sugars and fats are cheaper in terms of euros per day than diets composed of the recommended foods, the whole grains, the fruit, the vegetables, the meats, the fish, and so on. So this is now a study based on French data set, people who consumed 1,000 calories per day, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. In every case, it's a negative relation. Eating energy-dense foods with lower nutritional value, higher energy content is associated with savings. So to sum up, yes, healthier diets do cost more. Healthier diets are consumed by more affluent people who live in nicer neighborhoods and who are thinner. So obesity, to my mind, is almost entirely an economic issue because social class, money, wealth, social capital, social context do predict diet quality. These are data now for Healthy Eating Index, a measure of diet quality developed by the US Department of Agriculture. It goes up with income. It goes up even more strongly with education. So education truly is the major predictor of diet quality, not so much income. And then those things come together because obese people have a lower quality diet, they have less money, they live in poorer neighborhoods with less access to healthy foods. And so to my mind, obesity is very much a social and economic issue. Many people are obese because they are poor. And here we have a problem with the current food and the physical environment. And what I'm trying to say is that ways to reduce the obesity epidemic really ought to go beyond individual motivation, individual persuasion, individual behavior change. We really are at the level of having to influence policy, not only the local health policy, but perhaps the national policy regarding agriculture and health, and it probably does include the WIC package, the Farm Bill, and all the other interventions that the Congress is now thinking of. So the obesity problem can be resolved only by joining the public health approach to the existing medical approaches, and we also need at the local level neighborhood and community-based strategies for obesity prevention. Thank you.
This program really gives you all the tools that you're going to need to prepare for medical school. It challenges you academically and personally to become a better student and a better future physician.
Getting in the field of dentistry is more just a dream. Now I actually feel like I'm in the pipeline.
They're talking about radiology, surgery, pediatrics, and all these different areas of medicine that I hadn't heard of before.
I was not sure whether to go dental or med, and just coming here and being able to be in an OR in the hospital, being with doctors, the exposure, and opening myself to different experiences has helped me decide what I want to do.
The SMDP, it stands for the Summer Medical Dental Education Program. And what it is, it's a 6-week summer enrichment program that invites college undergraduates to spend that 6 week with us in order to prepare themselves to be more competitive for either medical school or for dental school.
It's a program that we administer on 12 sites across the country. There are 80 participants in each site. 9 of the sites are combined medical dental sites. 3 of the sites are medical only sites. And the goal of the program is to bring the best students that we can from across the country who are interested in pursuing careers in medicine and dentistry, who are largely from groups underrepresented or disadvantaged.
I'm from a family of 15 children. I'm the 9th. My parents came from Mexico, and I was born here in Toppenish. I worked in the fields since I was about 4 with my parents. I only worked there like 3 or 4 years. In elementary, I did really well, but it was middle school that really challenged me, because in elementary, there was bilingual teachers, and in middle school, there was no bilingual teachers, because my first language is Spanish. Once I went to high school, it was much better. College, again, was really tough. It was like a big jump there from high school to college for me.
And there's emerging research that's coming out.
Going away from my family, when I had to come here, I hardly get to see them because I'm very close to my dad. I'm the first one to come to university, the first one to go into medicine.
I grew up in Lancaster, California. It's a suburb of Los Angeles. I'm 22 years old. That's because I took some time off to go to the Marine Corps and serve my country. I continue to serve the military to this day as a reservist. My goals are to get a DDS and become a dentist so that way I can go and help the underserved communities. Though I had done well in high school, I went to college with the wrong mentality, but after coming here, they taught me the study habits and what have you, what's necessary to elevate yourself to the next level in the hard sciences.
Look from back here.
I want to go back and help the urban youth who can relate to me. That's why I try to keep my slang and not try to become too acclimated.
I grew up on the Acoma Reservation. Growing up on the reservation is really close-knit, and I had to make the decision to leave the reservation to get higher education in Massachusetts, and I really feel that really helped me because I was able to know, the disparities on the reservation, and that acts as a motivation when I'm in college. When I do get homesick, I think, I want to help my family, and my family includes, the other community members of Acoma and Jemez and just Native American people.
My name is Karina Chavez. I go to UC Berkeley. Currently, I will be taking organic chemistry. I have 4 more classes to take in the sciences. I'm a psych major, so I really enjoy psychology. I'm planning on going to dental school, hopefully in 3 years.
I'm half black, quarter Mexican, quarter white. Really proud of all my cultures. My mom raised me and my sister. I watched her go from welfare to a full-time job, and then she went into nursing school. We didn't have a lot of money. Grew up on commodities and cheap food, but my mom always made sure there was food on the table, milk in the fridge, and she never let us know that we were at a disadvantage. We were always happy. She always made sure that we were able to do things and pursue them.
I had pretty much come to the decision that I wanted to go into medicine, and then in my junior year I applied to the program and I came and I stayed here in Seattle for 5 weeks, and I was just afforded some opportunities to observe surgeries and see trauma, and just that was just amazing for me because it was just like full immersion into medicine, and it was just full on and just amazing, and definitely cemented my decision to pursue medicine.
The double bond actually splits up into 2 bonds.
Students are exposed to an array of science and math courses that emphasize oral communication skills, writing skills, and it's all designed to bring them to the door of medicine and dentistry better perhaps prepared than they otherwise would have been, but certainly with confidence that they can achieve admittance to medical and dental school.
Remember, everybody's face is different.
I'd compare this program to boot camp. It's actually an academic boot camp. It's the same thing that I did in the Marines, except for now it's academic. Instead of running and push-ups, I'm reading and studying, writing papers and reviewing my physics and chemistry. From 8 a.m. till 5 p.m., it's just academic grind.
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure. It's hard sometimes to push yourself and really reach those higher levels of potential that we have. What these programs do is really push us to that, and then we kind of see ourselves that we won't break and we won't fall apart, and that we actually do gain a lot from it.
Oh, I get it. You just go back around. It's a full schedule. It's a little overwhelming on first, but you learn how to balance things, and I think I'm pretty good at it.
I really like it so far. It's like training for a marathon before I go back to school. I've really learned a lot from taking physics courses to the organic chemistry to writing and composition.
Now, at this point in time, how do you manage stress in your life?
The classroom stuff to me is just, it's wonderful. I love to hear about coping with the stress, about, you know, every class that they have just sucks me in, and I just want to learn and learn and learn.
The nightly tutoring sessions were optional for those who need the extra help, and because of the intense scheduling, a lot of students do need the extra help.
The tutoring is wonderful. It wasn't until I came here that I realized that you can actually ask people for help, and there are people willing to help you get there.
Apart from the academics enrichment, they do have the hands-on experiences here and their first-time experiences. So suture clinic for one thing, where they're sewing up pigs' feet, and they'll probably later do that in their medical school and dental school training.
I'm going to go ahead and enter the patient's right-hand side.
We also have some patient intubation simulations. Our students are in there playing with mannequins, learning how to intubate a person.
It works. We just saved his life.
Though they won't practice this on a real person, they do get the first hands-on experience.
Being here and just being in a class where everyone's a minority in some way or form, it's just great. You just feel at home, and everyone respects each other, and this program has really helped me as a person.
It's great that a program like this exists. I mean, where else do they fly you out here and pay for your food, pay for your room and board, and give you a stipend, and all you have to do is read books? You're getting paid to better yourself. Can't beat it.
Well, let's see. I've got a hernia procedure, an exploratory lap.
The enthusiasm that you see in their faces when they come back from witnessing a simple surgery is quite dramatic, and something that I think that they will truly remember.
Each student has the ability to visit the Harborview Emergency Room or the UW Medical Center operating room, or even go up to Mount Vernon to visit the microcamps.
And these particular camps are for a lot of the migrant farm workers that are in our local area for a very temporary period of time. And we offer them blood pressure screenings, diabetes screenings as well. And we also do tuberculosis skin testing on them as well.
I could not imagine the magnitude of poverty that I saw there. The living conditions were just, I mean, they're chicken coops and people lived in them. When I went there and I was with those kids, it made me look around. I go, you know what? This is the reason why I'm going to medicine. These kids and their lives, that's my drive. This is why I'm here, and this is why I'm going to be a pediatrician. So it's really helped me cement my reasons for going into medicine.
I found doctors from this program who have been able to help help out their communities, go back home, and help the underserved, and I think that's great to be able to give back to society.
I have a great mentor. He's a radiologist.
We use magnifying glasses if we need to.
He shows me and he explains to me what he's doing.
Take a look at this. Do you see anything that kind of pops out at you as being abnormal?
When I see an x-ray of breast, I actually know what we're looking for. He recommends treatments for what he finds, so I kind of know a little bit of that. The mentoring's great.
Keep an open mind. Don't focus in on one thing too early. You're going to have a lot of fun in medical school deciding what you want to do.
Well, back home, there's a lot of Hispanic people that work in the fields that don't really like to go to the hospitals or the clinic, and I'd like to change that.
You don't realize that a DDS is actually a doctor of dental surgery until you have the opportunity to shadow dentists, and dentists are doing surgery every day. The mentors are great. They let you get real close and see everything that's going on.
It's given me so much more confidence. I mean, the road to medical school and stuff, it's challenging. And for every negative thought I had, there was always more people in the program there to tell me that, hey, you can do this, you know, to support me, encourage me. And that's just really helped me tremendously.
It's a program that allows them to explore their options, and we're about trying to help students become good citizens and to select a career that will make them happy and that will allow them to make a contribution. We hope it's in medicine and dentistry, but if not, we just hope that we've helped them along the way to making a decision that will best suit their needs.
This is what a student needs to do, get experience one-on-one and see for themselves, and just being there really helps decide if that's what you really want to do.
Follow your dreams. If it's going into medicine or going to any kind of teaching or anything that calls to you, especially if it's calling you to help your people.
It's helping me get an overview of the courses I have to take to get into med school. It's like a little spark that's going to keep me going. Now I definitely know I want to go into medicine.
I love this program. It's the best thing I've ever done.
But if you have any interest in medicine, I would definitely recommend that you apply, do it as early as possible, and come and be prepared to experience an amazing, amazing time.